You believe the problem is your account size. You believe that if you had more capital, you would trade better. You believe the mistakes would disappear. The hesitation would disappear. The fear would shrink. The discipline would strengthen. That belief feels logical. It feels reasonable. It feels justified. It is also incorrect. Capital does not remove uncertainty. It does not remove randomness. It does not remove the emotional response to risk. More money simply increases the size of the emotional trigger. If you cannot execute with precision on a small account, you will not suddenly become precise on a large one. The numbers will change. The psychology will not. A small account does not create inconsistency. It reveals it. When the position size feels significant relative to your balance, your nervous system reacts. Dopamine spikes when price moves in your favor. Cortisol rises when it moves against you. Your survival response activates because your brain interprets financial loss as threat. Not physical threat, but status threat. Identity threat. You begin to manage emotions instead of managing risk. You hesitate on valid setups. You exit early to protect comfort. You widen stops to avoid being wrong. You overtrade to recover quickly. None of this is caused by account size. It is caused by your relationship with uncertainty. The market does not care. It does not care if you are trading $50 or $50,000. It does not care about your rent, your ambition, your frustration, or your timeline. It offers opportunity. It offers risk. It offers probability. Anything can happen. That is true on a small account. That is true on a large account. The size of your capital does not change the independence of each trade. Every trade remains a unique event within a probabilistic framework. You are not paid for needing certainty. You are paid for executing an edge over a series of outcomes. A small account forces you to confront this quickly. It removes the illusion that you can hide behind capital. It compresses emotional feedback. It exposes impatience. It exposes entitlement. It exposes the belief that growth should be fast. Survival comes first. If you cannot protect a small account, you cannot protect a large one. If you cannot follow structure when the numbers feel small, you will not follow structure when they feel large. Growth is a byproduct of survival, not the other way around. The market does not care. Anything can happen. Your account size is not the problem. Your inability to think in probabilities is. Until that changes, more money will only magnify the same behavior. Execution is everything. Small capital creates psychological compression. When the account is small, every fluctuation feels amplified. Every tick looks meaningful. Every loss feels heavier than it objectively is. The mind begins to calculate survival, not statistics. It shifts from structured execution to urgency. Urgency to grow quickly. That urgency is not strategic. It is emotional. It is the survival mechanism activating. The brain associates limited capital with limited opportunity. It whispers that time is running out. It tells you that slow growth is not acceptable. It suggests that one strong move can change everything. And so, patience disappears. When capital feels small, every dollar becomes personal. You stop seeing risk as part of a probabilistic process. You begin seeing it as your money being attacked. The market moves against you, and your nervous system reacts as if something has been taken. Cortisol rises. Focus narrows. You feel tension in your chest. This is not analysis. This is threat response. The smaller the account, the stronger the attachment. Emotional attachment changes perception. Instead of evaluating a trade based on edge and structure, you evaluate it based on what it means to your balance. You calculate how much this win would help you. You imagine the relief of doubling the account. You feel the pain of losing even a small percentage. And that is where instability begins. The need to be right increases when you believe you cannot afford losses. You start thinking that every trade must work. You treat each position as if it must produce income immediately. When it does not, frustration appears. The ego interprets a small loss as evidence of incompetence. But the market does not know your account size. It does not care if your balance is small. It does not adjust volatility based on your emotional comfort. It simply moves. Uncertainty always exists. But when capital feels limited, uncertainty feels dangerous. It feels threatening because your margin for error appears smaller. The brain exaggerates risk when resources are perceived as scarce. This is a biological response. Scarcity increases dopamine-driven impulsivity. You crave quick gains. You become more sensitive to short-term rewards. This is why small accounts often lead to overtrading. You take more trades than your system requires because you want faster progress. You reduce patience between setups. You force entries. You widen stop losses because you cannot accept being wrong. You move stops further away because closing at a loss feels like personal failure. But widening a stop does not remove uncertainty. It only postpones acceptance. The problem is not the capital size. The problem is the emotional interpretation of capital size. A small account does not require urgency. It requires precision. It requires strict risk control. It requires thinking in samples, not single trades. Emotional neutrality is not natural. It is trained. You train it by accepting that a loss is a business expense, not a verdict on your identity. You train it by predefining risk before entry and refusing to negotiate with it. You train it by reducing position size until losses no longer feel threatening. The account grows only when behavior stabilizes. If you cannot remain calm with small capital, increasing capital will not solve the instability. It will amplify it. The solution is not faster growth. The solution is structured execution under pressure. Small capital is not the enemy. Emotional urgency is. Anything can happen. Your job is not to force growth. Your job is to execute correctly, repeatedly, without emotional disturbance. That is how neutrality is built. And neutrality is the foundation of survival. You are still measuring yourself by the result of one trade. That is the first distortion. You enter a position, price moves against you, you feel wrong. Price moves in your favor, you feel skilled. One outcome becomes a verdict on your intelligence, your strategy, your worth. This is not trading. This is emotional attachment to randomness. One trade means nothing. A series defines the edge. If you cannot internalize that, you will sabotage yourself repeatedly. Markets operate through uncertainty. Every setup, no matter how refined, exists inside a field of variables you cannot see. Liquidity shifts, Participants act for reasons you will never know. News emerges without warning. Even the cleanest structure can fail. Anything can happen. When you focus on a single trade, your brain shifts into survival mode. The amygdala interprets financial risk as personal threat. Cortisol rises. Dopamine spikes when price ticks in your favor. You begin to manage the trade emotionally instead of statistically. You cut winners short to secure relief. You widen stops to avoid being wrong. You hesitate on the next valid signal because the last loss still feels fresh. This is what destroys small accounts. Not strategy, behavior. Independent outcomes, random distribution. You may have an edge with a positive expectancy across 100 trades. That does not mean the next 5 will be winners. They are independent events. The market does not owe you balance. It does not compensate you for previous losses. It does not reward you for patience. The market does not care. If you think in single trades, you will constantly search for certainty. You will try to filter out every losing setup. You will overanalyze. You will delay execution. You will feel anxiety before entry and regret after exit. You will personalize randomness, and you will never allow your edge to play out. Execution is everything. Execution means taking every qualified setup according to predefined rules. No emotional edits. No selective participation. No avoidance because the last trade hurt. When you commit to structured execution, you shift from prediction to probability. Prediction asks, will this one win? Probability asks, over the next 50 trades, does my edge produce net positive results? That shift changes everything. When you accept that any single trade can lose, you stop negotiating with risk. You define it in advance. You cap it. You respect it. Risk management becomes your only true control. You do not control outcome. You control position size. You control stop placement. You control adherence to rules. That is it. A trader who understands probabilistic thinking does not celebrate individual wins or internalize individual losses. Both are data points, nothing more. Emotional neutrality becomes possible only when you stop assigning meaning to one result. Anything can happen. If you truly believe that, fear decreases. Urgency decreases. The need to be right decreases. You stop chasing recovery after losses. You stop protecting ego after wins. You start focusing on consistent execution across a large sample. The edge exists in the series, not the moment. When you obsess over one trade, you trade your emotions. When you commit to a structured process over many trades, you trade your system. The difference between small accounts and sustainable ones is not prediction accuracy. It is statistical patience. Execution is everything. Anything can happen, and that is not a threat. It is the foundation of professional thinking. A small account does not create pressure. Your interpretation of the small account creates pressure. You believe the problem is capital. You believe the solution is acceleration. You believe that if you can just grow it faster, the discomfort will disappear. That belief is the beginning of self-sabotage. When the account is small, every percentage point feels personal. Every win feels like progress toward escape. Every loss feels like delay. The brain translates financial fluctuation into emotional meaning. It activates the same survival circuits that respond to physical threat. Dopamine spikes after a small gain. Cortisol rises after a small loss. The account becomes tied to identity, and identity does not like slow growth. So you overtrade. You take marginal setups. You shorten your criteria. You convince yourself that more activity equals more opportunity. In reality, you are attempting to outrun randomness. You are trying to compress time. You want the statistical curve to bend faster than probability allows. But probabilities do not accelerate because you feel urgency. Each trade is independent. Each outcome is uncertain. Increasing frequency does not increase certainty. It only increases exposure to variance. Then you experience a small win. Not large, not life-changing. Just enough to trigger reward chemistry. Dopamine signals progress. The brain interprets it as confirmation. You see, this works. Press harder. So you increase size impulsively. Not because the system improved. Not because the sample size justified scaling. But because the emotional brain wants to amplify pleasure while it is present. This is not strategic sizing. This is reward chasing. Anything can happen on the next trade. Size does not change that. When the next trade loses, the emotional system shifts instantly. The same brain that chased pleasure now seeks relief. A modest loss feels larger in a small account. The percentage hurts more. The time to recover feels longer. Ego feels attacked. So you revenge trade. You do not call it that. You call it making it back. But psychologically, you are attempting to neutralize discomfort. The market becomes an opponent that owes you correction. You begin trading to repair emotion, not to execute edge. The market does not care. It has no memory of your prior position. It does not know your entry. It does not know your account size. It does not know your frustration. Then comes the most subtle behavior. You move the stop. Not dramatically, just slightly. Just enough to avoid the sting of being wrong. You widen risk to postpone emotional pain. You redefine structure in real time. You tell yourself the trade needs more room. In reality, you need more comfort. This is an attempt to control randomness. You cannot control outcome, so you try to control when you must admit error. But widening a stop does not remove uncertainty. It only increases exposure. Discipline failure compounds faster than market loss. A single loss within plan is controlled variance. A single impulsive deviation changes risk distribution. Repeated deviations reshape expectancy. The damage is not in one trade. The damage is in behavioral drift. Small accounts magnify this drift because the desire for acceleration is stronger than patience. You want growth before consistency. You want scale before stability. But survival comes first. Structure comes first. Execution comes first. The market does not care about your timeline. It does not care about your goals. It does not care about your urgency. Anything can happen. Your job is not to force growth. Your job is to execute with precision across a large sample of trades. Small accounts do not fail because of size. They fail because the trader tries to control what cannot be controlled. And the market does not care. Stability in trading is not created by confidence. It is created by structure. Most traders search for emotional control. They try to feel calm before they execute. They try to eliminate fear before they enter. That approach is backward. Emotions do not disappear because you want them to. They settle down when your behavior is predefined. A structured framework removes negotiation, and negotiation is where instability begins. Start with fixed percentage risk per trade, not flexible, not adjusted based on conviction. Fixed. When you risk a consistent percentage of your capital on every trade, you remove emotional distortion from position sizing. You stop asking, "How sure am I?" Certainty is irrelevant. Anything can happen. Fixed risk forces you to accept uncertainty before you enter. It aligns you with probabilities instead of prediction. You are not trying to win big. You are trying to execute consistently. Next, define a maximum daily exposure, not just per trade, per day. Without a daily cap, losses compound emotionally. Each loss triggers dopamine withdrawal and activates the survival response. The brain seeks recovery. It seeks relief. It seeks to get back to neutral. That is when impulsive trades appear. That is when discipline collapses. A predefined daily limit interrupts that cycle. It protects financial capital. More importantly, it protects mental capital. Mental capital is your ability to think clearly under uncertainty. Once depleted, you are no longer trading probabilities. You are trading emotion. Then, remove stop-loss adjustments after entry. No widening. No moving it just a little. When you adjust a stop to avoid pain, you reinforce ego protection. The brain interprets the loss as personal. It tries to defend identity instead of managing risk. The market does not care. It is not attacking you. It is not testing you. It is simply moving. Your stop defines the risk you accepted. Changing it changes your integrity. Execution is everything. Track execution quality, not profit. Profit is an outcome variable. It fluctuates randomly in the short term. Execution is a behavior variable. It is within your control. If you followed your plan, you succeeded. even if the trade lost. If you broke your rules, you failed, even if the trade won. This redefinition of success stabilizes identity. You stop linking self-worth to outcome. You link it to discipline. Measure success by rule adherence. Score yourself based on process. Did you follow risk parameters? Did you respect exposure limits? Did you honor your stop? These are measurable behaviors. Structure reduces emotional volatility because it removes decision-making under pressure. The more decisions you make in uncertainty, the more the brain seeks comfort. Comfort leads to deviation. Preservation of mental capital must come before growth. Without stability, growth is unsustainable. Without discipline, edge is meaningless. Execution is everything. You do not control outcomes. You control behavior. Stability is not emotional. It is structural. And structure is what makes probabilistic thinking possible. You are not struggling because your account is small. You are struggling because your identity is misaligned. Most traders enter this profession with one silent objective: grow the account as fast as possible. They measure success in percentage gains. They measure progress in balance size. They chase acceleration. They chase expansion. They chase the emotional high of growth. But growth without stability is fragile. Speed without structure collapses. The transformation required for long-term consistency is not strategic. It is psychological. You must shift from outcome chaser to risk manager. That shift changes everything. When your identity is built around making money quickly, every trade becomes a performance. Every position becomes a test of your intelligence. Every drawdown feels personal. The nervous system reacts as if something is being taken from you. Dopamine spikes during anticipation. Cortisol rises during uncertainty. Your survival response activates. You override rules. You widen stops. You size up impulsively. Because your identity is tied to outcome. But a risk manager does not chase outcomes. A risk manager protects capital first. The objective becomes simple: survive, preserve, execute. When preservation becomes the priority, emotional volatility decreases. You accept uncertainty fully. You understand that no trade is guaranteed. Anything can happen. Not as a slogan, as a fact. You stop reacting to wins with excitement. You stop reacting to losses with frustration. Both are neutral data points inside a large sample. One trade does not define you. One loss does not threaten you. One win does not validate you. You think in series. Consistency builds size. Size does not build consistency. If you cannot protect a small account, you will not protect a large one. The behaviors scale. Impulsiveness scales. Overconfidence scales. Fear scales. The market does not care. It does not reward urgency. It does not punish caution. It simply moves. Anything can happen. Your job is not to predict what will happen. Your job is to manage risk when it does. Execution is everything. A small account is not a disadvantage. It is a psychological test. It exposes whether you can remain structured under uncertainty. It reveals whether you are addicted to outcomes or committed to process. Protect first. Execute precisely. Accept randomness. That is the identity shift. And without it, no strategy will save you.